I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Adirondack, and the Anishinaabe people. We are the beneficiaries of ancient agreements, such as the dish with one spoon, between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, who agreed to share the abundance of the land through peace, friendship, and mutual respect. The true Ro Wampum, by which the Haudenosaunee welcomes the settlers and agreed to share the land in mutual respect, and the Treaty of Niagara, considered a fundamental document by the First Nations in all future relations and treaties with the British. We recognize that we have a responsibility to be stewards of the land in cooperation and collaboration with the Indigenous people, not only for one generation, but for all generations to come. We understand that we have an obligation to learn the lessons of our history, educate ourselves about the experiences of the Indigenous people, and seek opportunities to heal the wounds that will result in reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. Many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people live and work in Fort Erie. We stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We have the good fortune to live in a land of such abundance, diversity, and beauty. Let us be vigilant in protecting Turtle Island. Mr. Clerk, the roll call, please.
All members of council are present, Your Honor.
Thank you. There is one addendum this evening. There's a closed session item with respect to Pettit Road that is being removed, deleted from the agenda. With respect to announcements, some very brief announcements. First and foremost, last weekend there was a lot of activity going on in Fort Erie. The Ridgeway BIA had their Christmas tree lighting ceremony on Friday evening. And if you haven't been in downtown Ridgeway after dark, I suggest you take the time to go to Ridgeway. It's beautifully decorated. It's getting set for the upcoming Spirit of Christmas event, which will take place on Friday, December the 1st and Saturday, December the 2nd. Second thing, Community Living held its annual gala. It was an unbelievably impressive event. I know, Councillor Noyes, that you were there. And it's the annual big fundraiser for Community Living Fort Erie. This year, in their Around the World series, they were in Greece. And so the theme was Greece. And it was an excellent evening. The Leisureplex was jam-packed with people, still in compliance with the fire code. But no, it was a wonderful event. And then finally, I think the most exciting Christmas parade that's ever taken place in Fort Erie took place on Saturday evening. And I know that several councillors, Christensen, Lewis, Dubanow, Councillor McDermott, you were in one of the original cars that were created, and I'm advised that you drove around in that as a child. In any event, the parade was after dark. A lot of floats, marching bands, dancers, singers, but the highlight had to be the very final float, the one upon which Santa Claus came into town, and Darren Peters is to be commended for putting together that float, which had 8 reindeer going through the sky, and Santa, who was at the back with his wife, I believe. Mrs. Claus was there. So to Brad Brunton and all of the individuals who assisted in putting together the Fort Erie Santa Claus Parade, I want to thank you. The BIA did an excellent job downtown on Jarvis Street, and so the weather was very, very cooperative. I can't wait until next Christmas because it's going to be a fantastic parade again, I'm sure. So congratulations all. Congratulations, Councillor McDermott, for your part as well. Okay, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? If there are none, we've got a series of upcoming public meetings and open houses. Our budget meetings continue with the second budget meeting on Wednesday, December the 6th. That will be the water and wastewater operating budget and user fee analysis. That meeting begins at 6 o'clock here in the council chambers. The budget bylaws are scheduled for Monday, November the 27th, which is next Monday. That would be the preliminary capital budget. And Monday, December the 18th, 2023 would be the water and wastewater budget and rates bylaw and the user fees bylaw. We have a public meeting scheduled with respect to amendments to the tree bylaw and that will be held next Monday, November the 27th, here in the council chambers, starting at 6 p.m. The information report will be available on our website on Thursday, November the 24th, at 5 o'clock or thereafter. The open house for a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment will be held on November 30th, 2023, with respect to the proposal at 557 Walden Boulevard. There's another public meeting, the process to review and update our official plan. That will be held Monday, December the 11th at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. And again, the information report to council will be available on our website at 5 p.m. on December the 6th. And finally, there's a public meeting for proposed development charges, rates, and policies that's to be held on Monday, November the 11th, again at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The information report, again, will be available December the 6th at 5 p.m. on our website. We have a couple of public meetings this evening, and the public meeting format will be that council will hear from a member of staff who will provide background information to council with respect to the application before us. Then the applicant or an agent on behalf of the applicant will be allowed to address council. Thereafter, if there's anyone other than the applicant who wishes to speak in favor of the report, we'll ask them to do so. Thereafter, anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or to ask questions of council will be given an opportunity. After that, I will ask, or throughout that, I will be asking Mr. Patton if there's anyone in the digital waiting room who wishes to address council. And then finally, I will ask the clerk if there have been any late written submissions with respect to the application. Process will be the same for each. Following each public meeting, there will be a report that council will consider, and then we will make a decision. The first public meeting, we will receive an information report. What that means is we are provided background information relative to the application, and staff will then consider the comments made by the public, comments made by council, and will ultimately provide us at some point in the future with a recommendation report, which we will then vote on relative to the application. So we're going to start with the draft plan of subdivision, official plan amendment, and zoning bylaw amendment with respect to the property at 1211 to 1237 Pettit Road. And Samantha Young will be providing us with background on that matter. Good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. I'm just going to wait for the presentation. Perfect. And then mics and everything is good? Okay. All right. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and residents. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information regarding a proposed draft plan of subdivision and combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for the lands known municipally as 111, 11211, 1225, 1237 Pettit Road. The owners are Marina Developments, and the agent is Lechin Lem from MBG Planning Solutions. The draft plan of subdivision proposes to create 31 blocks for a variety of housing types, ranging from low to medium density dwellings. The combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendments application proposes to amend the town's official plan and zoning bylaw to facilitate 100 residential units. Notification of today's public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice on the subject lands on October 31st until today. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands were mailed a notice of complete application and public meeting on the same day. This slideshow shows the timeline of the development application process. We are currently at the public meeting and information report stage. Following the public meeting and receipt of the information report, staff will bring a recommendation report forward for council's consideration in December 2023 or January of 2024. The proposed planning application is subject to a 120-day processing and review timeline, where the time begins the day the application is deemed complete and will stop the day council makes a decision on the application. Today marks day 56 of the 120-day timeframe. The subject property is located within the urban area boundary and in the Spears High Point Secondary Plan. The subject lands are located on the west side of Pettit Road and north of Nathaniel Drive in the town of Fort Erie. The subject lands have an approximate aggregate lot area of 3.83 hectares for all three properties. There are existing dwellings on each lot that are to be demolished to facilitate the future development. The land uses surrounding the subject lands include single detached dwellings to the north, single detached dwellings, commercial uses, vacant land with woodland features to the south, single detached dwellings, and a draft approved subdivision known as Spears Garden, known as High Point subdivision on the east side. Townhouses and single detached dwellings, it is Spears Garden on the east side, and then on the west side is the High Point subdivision, and townhouses and single detached, my bad. The future residents of the subdivision can make use of the High Point Park, which is a community park that is located 370 meters southwest of the subject lands in the High Point subdivision. Here's an image of the subject lands looking east from Marina Drive. And then another image looking west to 1211 Pettit Road from Pettit Road. The subject lands are designated low-density residential in part and environmental conservation overlay in part in the Spears High Point Secondary Plan in the town's official plan. The low-density residential land use designation is intended for only single-detached, semi-detached, and duplex dwellings. The applicant applied for an official plan amendment to redesignate the lands to medium-density residential in order to allow for increased density and multiple unit housing forms. The applicant also applied for a site-specific policy area to permit single-detached and semi-detached dwellings under the medium-density residential designation, since the medium-density residential designation only permits townhouses and apartment dwellings. The subject lands contain an environmental conservation area overlay along the rear lot line of the subject lands according to Schedule SHP-3 of the secondary plan. Policies within the official plan allows the boundaries of an environmental conservation area to be refined should an environmental impact study support the boundary changes and the classification of the natural area be updated through a site-specific amendment. An EIS was submitted and concluded there were no significant natural heritage features and the subject lands are suitable for development. The applicant is proposing to remove the EC overlay as part of the proposed site-specific policy area. The subject lands are within a zone of agricultural potential according to Schedule D of the official plan. Stage 1 and 2 archaeological assessments were submitted with this application and were reviewed and commented by the Niagara Region. The studies concluded that the subject lands are clear of any archaeological concern and no further assessments were necessary. The official plan also contains criteria under Policy 13.52 and Policy 13.73 for council to consider proposed plans of subdivision and amendments to the official plan and zoning bylaw respectively. The subject lands are currently zoned neighborhood development zone and environmental conservation overlay zone in the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw. The ND zone only permits existing single detached dwellings and accessory uses on site, and the EC overlay zone is associated with the natural heritage resources along the rear portion of the subject lands. The draft plan of subdivision proposes to create 31 blocks for a range of housing types and a stormwater management pond. It will facilitate 100 residential units. The subdivision will contain 5 lots, blocks 1 to 5 for 5 single detached dwellings. These will front onto Pettit Road. 4 blocks, blocks 6 to 9, to accommodate 4 semi-detached dwellings. That will be 8 units in total. And 17 blocks, which are blocks 10 to 26, to accommodate 87 townhouse dwelling units. The site has proposed 3 access points, each with a 20-meter wide road allowance. There will be 1 access from Marina Drive that connects to Pettit Road, and an opportunity for a road connection from Street B to Nathaniel Drive on the south side, should future development occur on the lands south of the site. Access from Pettit is proposed with 2 7 by 7 meter daylighting triangle to assist with maintaining sightlines at the intersection. The proposed road allowance will accommodate sidewalks on one side of the road allowance, providing connectivity from the existing sidewalks from Marina Drive to Pettit Road. In order to facilitate the draft plan of subdivision, a zoning bylaw amendment is required. The zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to change the zoning to a site-specific residential multiple 1 zone. It will include site-specific provisions to permit the proposed townhouses and semi-detached dwellings on the subject lands, and to decrease the minimum lot frontage, minimum lot area, and increase the maximum lot coverage. The site-specific provisions for the single detached dwelling include decreasing the minimum lot frontage from 15 meters to 14.16 meters for a corner lot, and increasing the maximum lot coverages from 50% to 60%. The site-specific provisions for the semi-detached dwellings include decreasing the minimum unit frontage from 9.5 meters to 8.2 meters for interior lots, and 10.5 meters to 9.7 meters for a corner lot. They are also proposing to decrease the minimum lot area to 238 square meters, whereas 305 square meters is required, and increasing the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 50%. The site-specific provisions for the street townhouse dwellings include decreasing the minimum lot area to 161 square meters for interior lots and 252 square meters for corner lots, whereas the required minimum lot area for interior lots is 200 square meters and 270 square meters for corner lots. And they are also requesting for increasing the maximum lot coverage from 40% to 55% of the lots. A public information open house was held on October 19th of 2023. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands were notified of the meeting through a notice mailed on October 4th. The public open house was attended by town staff, the agent, the owners, and 8 residents. A few concerns were identified by the residents of the area. So one included wildlife and environmental concerns. Residents inquired about environmental features located along the rear lot lines of the subject lands. They mentioned there are wildlife that traverse the area and are concerned the development will impact their habitat. Staff note that an environmental impact study was provided, and the study indicated the subject lands do not contain significant wildlife habitat and species at risk. However, the applicant is preparing an addendum to the EIS to consider the necessity for an environmental corridor to accommodate the movement of flora and fauna between naturalized areas located north and south of the subject lands. This will be reviewed by regional and town staff prior to the approval of the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Another concern raised was road safety and increase in traffic flows. Residents noted that the proposed development would increase the number of vehicles traveling along Pettit Road and can impact road safety for vehicles and pedestrians in the neighborhood. The residents also inquired whether a traffic impact study was completed and whether traffic calming measures will be implemented. Staff note that a TIS was provided and prepared, and the TIS recommend further consideration. Town staff recommend further considerations to be included in the TIS, such as traffic calming measures along Marina Drive and Street B, and internal and external road traffic control and sightlines. The details for transportation infrastructure designs will be further reviewed and approved as conditions of draft plan approvals. And lastly, the area residents raised concerns with the location of the stormwater management pond and inquired whether a fence would be constructed to prevent locals and children from entering the area. At this point, town staff is still working with the applicant on the details of the stormwater management pond and will continue to review relevant policies and criteria provided in the official plan, and will complete a detailed analysis of the proposal at the recommendation stage. However, a stormwater management pond is proposed on Block 31 and will be maintained at town standards to the satisfaction of the Director of Infrastructure Services. Okay, and that concludes my presentation for today.
Thank you very much, Ms. Young. Do any members of council have any questions? I have a few,
Okay.
if I might. So there is a secondary plan for this area, I believe,
Yes,
Spears High Point secondary plan.
yes.
Does this proposal comply with what was outlined in that plan?
So the proposal is recommending different road network. So this is the Spears High secondary plan designation currently. So it was proposed in the secondary plan that there would be 3 road accesses from Marina Drive down to Nathaniel, and then another connection onto Pettit Road. So this proposal that the applicant has submitted is proposing for a different layout of the secondary plan.
We also have a housing mix policy, do we not? Some targets that we are trying to gain in terms of single-family dwelling, detached, what have you. Could you recall what that is offhand?
Through your worship, I don't remember exactly all the numbers, but for Spears High Point, I'll get back to you because I don't want to say random numbers.
And this seems to be heavily loaded towards townhouses. Was there any discussion that you're aware of with the developer about that?
Through your worship, at the pre-consultation stage, the applicant did come in with a larger development proposal. They were proposing for 10 single detached dwellings, 16 semis, and then over 100 of townhouse units. So at this stage, they have revised their plans for a lower density than what was proposed initially. And this is also in connection to the High Point subdivision on the west side, which has some medium density there. So it seems like they want to bring over the townhouses from that side to incorporate into this side.
My recollection is that the secondary plan calls for low density. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So in order to achieve a medium density, the zoning that's being proposed was, I guess, put forth by staff in order to assist the developer to move forward with this plan?
So the applicant has applied for an official plan amendment to include the medium density residential and to include the single detached as well. I mean, low density, sorry.
Yeah, and having done that, even with the zoning, the proposed zoning, there are still, I believe, 9 requests to modify that zoning in order to accommodate this type of development. Is that correct?
Through your worship, yes.
Do you have any knowledge of the price point with respect to these units that are being proposed?
Through your worship, I do not know the price points that are being proposed.
Could you make a comment about the stormwater management pond? Is that the ideal location for the stormwater management pond?
Through your worship, town staff is currently still in discussions with the applicant on the location of the stormwater management pond. At this point, we would like to discuss further with the applicant and then bring back detailed comments at the recommendation report.
Okay, and then just looking at this slide 7, which is, I guess, something that came from the secondary plan.
Yes.
Does this optimize, in staff's view, does this secondary plan optimize the utilization of the land in that area?
Through your worship, respectfully, the planning analysis has not been conducted at this point. Currently, it's just collecting all the information received from agents and departments within town, and we would like to review this in more detail with the planning analysis at the recommendation report.
Okay, could you go to the next slide, which is slide 8? Maybe the next one, 9. Okay, so that's the plan. So this subdivision, for all intents and purposes, unless there's development immediately south, has one point of access at each end of the subdivision, which would mean all traffic flows through here.
Through your worship, yes.
And I think you indicated that staff has requested some further information relative to the traffic impact study.
Through your worship, yes.
Okay. Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. You actually raised a point that I was wondering about myself. And through you, I'm just wondering, was there any discussion with the applicant about, rather than going through a draft plan of subdivision, perhaps with this number of townhouse units, doing a draft plan of condominium that would have more control over parking, land use, through traffic and other such matters? Was there any discussion about that?
Through your worship to Councillor Dubanow, throughout the course of this application, since I've been working with the applicant, I have not had that discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Samantha. Thank you for your presentation. I can't find it when I'm looking for it here. In regards to the downspouts, I understand they're all supposed to go towards the ditch. Could you please explain to me how that's going to happen in a townhouse? Like, we have 6 townhouses. I can see how 1 can do it, and I can see how 6 can do it, but I don't know how that's going to work for 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Through your worship to Councillor Noyes, downspout being directed with the interior lots to the front yard is, just to clarify your question.
It says in here, and I can't find the exact sentence in there. It basically says that all downspouts are going to end or into the front yard on like a splash pad into the front yard.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that for the 2 end units, but I can't see how that's going to happen for the ones in between.
Through your worship to Councillor Noyes, so I actually have a photo of some existing townhouses developed by Marina Developments. In the interior units here, they actually have downspout pipes going down those units. So I would assume that the proposed developments would be similar to this, with the downspouts being in the interior units as well and being directed to the front yard.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that for the front of the house, but there's probably going to be gutters and down on the back of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So how are they going to get to the front of the house?
Councillor Noyes, I will get back to you at the recommendation report with some additional information after discussion with our development engineering staff.
Okay, thank you. The other question I have, if I can continue, Pettit Road. I know that there were some comments that it's a very busy road, and I sat on the traffic coordinating committee, and actually Pettit Road came up, and that was one of the questions. And the regional police that are represented on board said, yes, that's a very busy road, and yeah, speeding is an issue. But I don't see anything in this report that talks about traffic calming on Pettit. I know there was one request for a 4-way stop or a 3-way stop on I think it's Nathaniel and Pettit, but I don't see anyone addressing the concerns of the speed on Pettit. And it really, they really do fly. The police officers in attendance said that is an issue on Pettit Road.
Through your worship to Councillor Noyes, we did receive a traffic impact study that was prepared March of 2023, and we did receive some delays on some of the comments received on this. So the report may not directly reference it. However, we did receive comments, and one of the comments included traffic calming measures and a proposed dynamic speed sign to be implemented in 2024 along Pettit Road. So it might not completely address all of the public concerns along Pettit Road, but there seems to be some discussions behind the scenes to implement some traffic calming measures and to promote the safety of transportation in this area.
Thank you for that explanation, but just going, what is a dynamic speed sign?
In my understanding, it seems like it'll be like a digital sign that will be along Pettit Road that measures the speed of vehicles going along there.
Just to continue, and I'm not trying to be confrontational here, my understanding that we've had some of these dynamic speed signs up in different places in town, and they haven't made a difference in regards to the speed at all where they're posted. So why was you may not know, but the question of a stop on Pettit Road, why was that dismissed or not really pursued?
So at this point, town staff have provided the comments to the applicant to provide additional information on their TIS. Once we receive that addendum to the TIS, we will then be able to provide more detailed comments and to assist with the implementation of these recommendations.
Councillor Noyes?
One further question. In regards to lot coverage, and I think Mayor Redekop commented on that they want a change from what is to an exception to multiple residential. And even on that, they want a decrease in the lot coverage. Are you at all concerned about the drainage?
Through your worship to Councillor Noyes, at this stage, I'm still reviewing all the information and comments received.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. Anyone else? Thank you very much, Ms. Young.
Thank you.
So we're going to go to the applicant or the applicant's agent.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Butler.
Thank you for having me here tonight, Mr. Mayor. And my colleague Lee Chang Lim is online. He's going to be doing a presentation. So just while that's getting queued up, I'm Aaron Butler with NPG Planning Solutions. We're the agent on the file for Marina Homes. And as soon as presentation's loaded, Lee Chang, if you're online, you can go ahead and get started.
Mr. Patton, can you bring her in?
Your worship, she's just moving in now.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Thanks, Aaron, and good evening, everyone. My name is Lee Chang. I'm a planner with NPG, and I have a brief presentation prepared tonight on the proposal.
Could you just speak up a little bit louder, maybe increase the volume on your device?
Yes. Is this better? Can you hear me better?
Yeah, and I think you'll need to speak a little more loudly too. Pretend
Okay.
you're yelling at us.
Okay, I'll try my best.
Thank you.
So to provide a little bit of context, the subject lands have an area of 3.83 hectares with frontage on Pettit Road and Marina Drive. There are currently existing single detached dwellings on the site. And as you can see on the screen here, the surrounding neighborhood largely consists of single-family homes with townhouses located immediately west of the proposal on Marina and Plato Drive. The subject lands are currently designated low-density residential in the official plan and are zoned neighborhood development with an environmental conservation overlay. We are proposing an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, and draft plan of subdivision to facilitate a residential subdivision with 100 dwellings. The subdivision will comprise of 5 single detached dwellings fronting on Pettit Road, as labeled in yellow on the screen here, 4 blocks for 8 semi-detached dwellings as seen in light orange, and 17 blocks for 87 townhouse dwellings as seen in dark orange. This proposal will provide for an extension of the medium density uses immediately west of the property, which transitions to low density uses. 1 block is proposed for stormwater management fronting on Pettit Road, which is identified as Block 31. The proposed subdivision will also include the extension of Marina Drive to the west, a new street called Street B to the east, and a future road to the south. So I won't go over the next couple of slides, as this information has already been provided in depth in Samantha's presentation. In support of this proposal, the following studies were submitted: the Planning Justification Report, the Functional Servicing Report, the Stormwater Management Plan, a Traffic Impact Study, a Stage 1 Archaeological Assessment, and the Environmental Impact Study. And as Samantha has noted in her presentation, we've received comments from staff and are continuing to work to address the comments that were received. In conclusion, the proposal is consistent with the PPS, conforms with the growth plan, the Niagara official plan, and the town's official plan. The proposal contributes to intensification and a range of housing options in the town, provides an opportunity to make efficient use of land and existing services and infrastructure by directing growth to an area designated for residential use. And lastly, it provides for a connected and compatible built form and street network with the surrounding neighborhood.
Thanks, Lee Chang. And if I can just add a few things, Mr. Mayor, to that. Really, we see, to your question, Mr. Mayor, earlier on, does the secondary plan optimize the use of the land? We don't think it does, really, designated low density today. So we looked at the site with the subdivision that's been developed to the west, largely single-family homes, and large single-family homes on large lots. To continue that type of development would probably be inefficient on this property. There is medium density townhouses directly adjacent to the property to the west. So the thought is the townhouse development that's existing, that's extending through the site and phasing, stepping down to semis and singles along Pettit, closer to the existing singles on Pettit. So we did take that into consideration. We think this is a good balance, that it's a better use of the property while still kind of matching, if you will, what's adjacent to it to the west, phasing across, and what's adjacent to it to the east. With respect to some of the provisions that are requested in the zoning, they're, I won't say exactly the same, but largely similar to the provisions that are existing for the townhouses and the development to the west for the High Point subdivision. And I'll also say that those provisions that might be jumping out at you, they're not for every property. Some of them are, some lots are smaller than others. So I think, we have lot areas ranging, for example, depths for townhouses, for example, they range from 26 meters, which is on the shallower side on the internal lots, up to 31 meters. So some of the lots are smaller. We do think that they can fit comfortably a similar stock, housing stock that you see in the existing subdivision. And then some are larger than that minimum number you see in the zoning bylaw. I think that's really all I wanted to add, Mr. Mayor, to Lee Chang's presentation.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Butler, Ms. Lim, to whom do we direct questions?
You can direct questions through me, Mr. Mayor, if that's okay, and I'll take the lead and ask Ms. Lim if that's okay,
Sure.
to answer as needed through you.
That's fine. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Dubanow and then Councillor Noyes.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship, and it's good to see you again, Aaron. Welcome back. It's been a little while. I just have one question, and it's similar to the question that I asked Samantha earlier, and just with the sheer number of street towns that are being proposed. Was there any discussion about a draft plan of condominium rather than a draft plan of subdivision? And the reason I ask that, we very often hear concerns related to parking, public roads, the compatibility and the interface of higher density versus lower density. And a draft plan of condominium may help resolve some of those concerns. So I'm just wondering if that was a discussion that had come up at all internally, separate from the town.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Dubanow. To be honest, that wasn't really a thought, but I can answer that the subdivision in our mind is really better for this property. We have public road connections to the west. The secondary plan calls for public road connections north-south to Nathaniel, and the secondary plan calls for a public road connection to the east. So really this, condominium development on this parcel would kind of be isolated and not connect the surrounding properties well. It wouldn't connect, the public road system well, east to west or north to south. It might kind of close off future connections to the site and through the site. So from a planning perspective, in my opinion, the public road system works better for a site like this.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Through you to the presenter, I forgot his name. Anyway, in regard to the price point for some of these, what are you looking at? Are any of them going to be affordable?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm told that the townhouses at this point in today's market, this could change, are in and around the 700,000 range.
So in other words, not affordable.
Those wouldn't be considered affordable by definition. Through you.
Thank you. In regards to the, I'm looking at the minimum lot coverage, and you're requesting, the requirement is 200 square meters, and that's already, because you've asked for something less than what it was, when it was zoned. With the zoning change, you're going to go to 161, which is about 40 square meters less than required. How many of the homes are going to be that, or lots are going to be that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't have that number handy, but I can say that it kind of is a gradient. There's a pinch point north-south across the site that the lot depths are a little smaller, and then they get larger as the site goes west. So I don't have that answer, but hopefully that helps.
Okay. It doesn't really help, because I still don't know the answer. In regards to, I know this, I didn't find this in the report, and I didn't hear from the presentation. I'm just thinking about the schools. I'm looking at 100 new buildings, basically, and probably looks like they're going to be family-oriented. By the picture, looks like two-story or whatever. Has any discussion with the school boards?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe in Appendix 3 of the staff report, there's comments from DSBN in terms of attending Garrison Road Public School and the high school, of course.
Councillor Noyes.
Okay, no, thank you.
Any other members of council? So, Mr. Butler, if the towns are starting at, or about $700,000 per unit, I'm presuming then that the semis and the single-family dwellings would be much greater. Do you know who the market is for these units?
Who the market is, Mr. Mayor? I would think for families in that range.
Do you know if
Mr. Mayor.
that's a market that would consist of local individuals? Or are we talking about attracting people from outside of Fort Erie to live in these units?
Through you, I don't have that exact answer, but I'm not sure that the marketing would be geared specifically towards local residents or
To whoever can afford to pay.
whoever can afford to buy, whoever wants to purchase.
Slide 2 of the presentation that was provided by Ms. Lim showed the plan, and you've indicated that, in your view, this is an efficient use of the lands that your client owns. What about the lands to the south between the southerly limit of your client's lands and Nathaniel Drive? have you given any consideration to whether this proposal and the way it's set up will permit maximum use or efficiency of the lands to the south?
Thanks for the question, Mr. Mayor. So there's two parcels to the south. There's 1199 Pettit. That parcel is basically the width of the depth of a lot. And so those, a development on 1199 would face the new Street B in this subdivision. They could be developed on this public road, another good reason for a public road. And then there's another lot that's on the north side of Nathaniel. Those lots would face Nathaniel. There's also, we've allowed for a north-south connection. So it's possible that some lots could face this new short street, north-south. Or they'd simply face, one set of lots would face the new Street B, another would face Nathaniel.
Mr. Patton, can you put up on the screen the plan of subdivision, the proposed plan of subdivision? Because I'd like to make reference to that plan in terms of what we're just talking about. Thank you. So block 27 at the bottom, that'd be the southwest corner, says additional lands, but the lots, or what could be lots for the property to the south, are essentially blocked off by the cul-de-sac. I mean, there's at least one lot that could be put in there, that's gonna be blocked out. Unless there's some plan for block 27.
So if you look at, the turn in the corner, so just for example, the top right of the picture, block 7 and block 8, the way that those semis, or you can do the same thing with townhouse lots, they're kind of pie-shaped lots in the corner. So the same thing could happen in that bottom left with block 27. Block 27 might not be the eventual configuration of a lot, right? Block 27 wouldn't necessarily be a lot that's built on. It would form part of a future development from the parcel to the south.
And then if we look at the southeast corner, where the proposed stormwater management pond is going to be going in, how would the property to the south be maximized? Because I don't know what the access point would be there to the lots immediately to the south of the stormwater management pond. Maybe one off of Pettit Road, but it looks like there's some other land that may be problematic.
To you, Mr. Mayor, so part of that parcel would be developed from Pettit, part from Street B, and we have conceptually laid that out in terms of what that would look like, what that could look like to try to optimize the use of that land.
I think council would be very interested in seeing that, so perhaps if that's been shared with staff, they can provide that to us. If not, perhaps you can forward it to staff so that they can circulate that to us, because I'd very much like to see how that can be utilized. And as I understand it, there's still discussion with respect to the traffic issue, and there's still some discussion about this possible wildlife corridor.
So on the traffic, Mr. Mayor, really the traffic study provided by our client to the town considers that Pettit Road, it concludes that Pettit Road has the capacity to take on this amount of volume. What my understanding is, some of the comments that we've gotten back that they'd like to look at is really with respect to traffic calming on the internal streets and traffic control at the intersection of Street B with and Pettit, which lines up with the extension of Seymour Avenue, John Bright Avenue, I think. So that, yes, that's part of what we'll look at, in addition to some other comments. And you are correct on the environmental impact study. There's some additional commentary and discussion. I think that's been asked for by the region and by town staff with respect to wildlife movement.
Do you know if your client was aware of the Spears High Point secondary plan when he acquired this property?
Most likely, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, through you to the presenter. I'm going to ask the same question in regards to the downspouts, because I did find it here. It's a condition for storm sewers. It says that the subdivision agreement includes a clause requiring that each agreement of purchase and sale state that roof downspouts shall discharge only to the ground surface via splash pads to the front yard. How is that going to happen with the townhouses? I'm not talking about the two end units, I'm talking about the ones in between.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so the conditions you're talking about, I think, are conditions that your staff have put together in the comments. So that would certainly be a detailed design, but I think that references to the town's lot grading and drainage bylaw. I think that standard that you're talking about is from the bylaw, I'm assuming. And if that's the case, I would imagine that the eaves from the house would be slanted towards the front to one point, discharging to the front. But certainly, I'm not an engineer, and that's a detailed engineering comment to
Okay,
deal with.
on a peaked roof like this, I don't know how, if this is the back, I don't know how you can get the downspout from here to go to the front of to the front yard. I don't see how that's going to happen.
Well, you've indicated you're not an engineer. I guess the engineers might be able to provide you with a clearer answer on how that's supposed to work.
Well, and my concern is about the drainage here, because the lots themselves, the lot coverage is small, and you're not going to have a lot of green space, so to speak, for the drainage to be accommodated. But anyway, and if you put a swale in there, you're going to even have a smaller backyard. Anyway, thank you.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you.
Butler and Ms. Lim. Okay, is there anyone who wishes to address council to speak in support of the application, other than obviously the owner or the owner's agents? Is there anyone, Mr. Patton, is there anyone in the digital waiting room that wishes to address council? Is there anyone other than Ms. Lim in the digital waiting room? Okay. So is there anyone who wishes to address council or speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. We'll need your name and address for the record. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and the councillors. And by the way, congratulations on getting yourselves voted in. I live on Plato Drive. I live right beside where that new development is going to be, 1238 Plato Drive.
And your name, sir.
Patrick Frawley,
Okay.
1238 Plato Drive, L2AOC7. I'm not against the development itself, but there are too many homes being proposed in that space of land. 87 townhouses. The proposal, from what I understand, is that to take what you already have as a scheduled piece of land, so many square mile size, right? Make it smaller, and make the house the size of the house smaller, so it can fit on a smaller piece of land that they want. I don't agree with that at all. If anything, you want to make the houses a little bit bigger than what you have already, because I live in one of the townhouses. And I have no issue. It's a nice townhouse. We appreciate it very much. By the way, the builders did an excellent job. I will say that. But the idea of pushing everybody into a small area, congesting them and not like that, and you also want to make your driveway from your garage door to your sidewalk, even if there's a sidewalk, they want to cut that down. Okay. If you go to Niagara Falls, there's a development in there where they have bungalow townhouses. Their driveways are so small that the edge of the car is right on beside the road. That's too much. That's too much congestion. For when the snow falls here in Fort Erie, we get a lot of snow, right? So that's not gonna be very good for the snow plows going down the road. But my objection basically is, there's too many, townhouses being suggested and making them too small. Less townhouses and make the townhouses bigger. That's just my suggestion. Give it that. Thank you.
Can you just spell your last name?
Sure. F-R-A-W-L-E-Y.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frawley.
Sure.
Oh, before you go, any members of council have any questions of Mr. Frawley? No? Now you get to go. Okay, thank you. Anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this matter? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. It's Talia Reeves, and the address is 1178 Pettit Road. I addressed council a little while ago on another proposal on Pettit Road, and I understand there's a lot of talk about traffic on Pettit Road, and all I'm asking, again, I agree, we're not going to be able to stop the development. Agreed, low density for all that is just going to add congestion to our area. I'm asking that the development fees of this property be put to slowing down Pettit Road and making it safer. That's my request, really. I know I can't, there's not a lot of fighting, anything else I can do, but I can ask for money to be earmarked for Pettit Road.
Yeah, that's a very grave concern for, I think, all of us.
I do have a question. I understand a traffic study was done for this project. I understand there's a traffic study that was conducted for the project that's behind me, and the one that was done for High Street. What's done for the accumulation of all of the projects that are being done?
Well, that's a very good question. So staff has indicated that they're seeking an addendum to the traffic impact study on this particular one. But you're right, that's a very excellent point, and a point that we've raised as a council in the past. It's all well and good to do a traffic impact study for one development, but there's an accumulation of development. So that's something that staff is listening to your question and to the comments that are being made by your neighbors and members of council. So we'll get an answer to that in the recommendation report, because it's not just one subdivision,
No.
it's the whole accumulation.
Yeah, okay, that's all I have.
Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Reeves? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am Patrick's wife, Janice Frawley, same address, 1238 Plato Drive, Fort Erie, Ontario, L2AOC7.
Thank you.
And I agree with everything that he has said. We like the townhouse that we live in, and it's a good size. But if we look to the back, it doesn't appear to be enough place to put 87 townhouses. Like, I don't mind people buying townhouses because we have one. And it's just, I don't consider that medium density. That is extremely high density. When you think of the children, we don't have kids, but there are a lot of kids in the area where we are right now. And with the traffic and with all those kids there, I don't know about the school systems and all that, because each home might have so many kids and each home might have so many people going to work. So I don't know how all of that traffic will work out, and the schools for the children. Also, I also brought up this thing about, since we lived there, we saw wolves and deer passing in the back there. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I don't know if they're going to put a fence to keep them back, because I wouldn't like that to impact the children when they build the homes, because the animals, they don't know what's happening, okay? So if they're going to be building there, I don't know if they're going to put a fence, the city or somebody put a fence so that the animals don't cross, and the children will be right there too playing. And if you think of each home having 2 people going to work, it's 100 homes, that's 200 vehicles, okay? That's realistic. They may be going around the same time to work. And most people might be going on to Pettit because there are not many jobs in Fort Erie. And that's not the only development happening in Fort Erie. So all those things have to be considered. Then the children, I'm glad that this developer built a park for the children. However, when the children, sometimes they walk on the street to go to school or to get the bus, there's so much congestion. If you look at 87 townhouses if each person has 2 or 3 children, because it's most likely two-story. They wouldn't have enough place if they make the place so short, like my husband said, for the driveway and for the backyard, just to pack so many townhouses in there. So they will still be effective if they have less townhouses, and the builder can still do his thing because he builds good homes. I live in one, so I'm not against him at all. So that is my understanding, that for all those children, when they're walking to go to school or whatever, right, all of them will be, just think of it, 87 times 2 or 3. How many children is that? Just in that one area to come out there to go to school. And then to go on to Pettit, like you said, that's a problem, because some of the homes already open onto Pettit. So all of that needs to be in consideration. I am not a architect, I'm not whatever it is, engineer, whatever, but I'm just practical common sense, and I'm just asking you all to sort of work along with everybody, and like I said, think about the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frawley. Before you go, any members of council have any questions of Ms. Frawley? No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else wish to address council with respect to this matter? Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Bob Trendle. I own the 2 acres to the south of this project. I don't agree with the townhouses. When I moved there, it was farmland. Then it was moved to neighborhood development, which was great. We got a lot of nice houses on Pettit Road. Now we got some nice houses out behind us, but that is way too many people in that small area. I just don't understand why we're going to put that many people in that small area. I also don't agree with that pond out at the end of my driveway on Pettit Road. You said it's for runoff of water. Yes, we got water, and I'm going to have more if you put the pond there. I think it should be at the back of the property, because that is the lowest part of the property, is at the back end, not the front end.
Mr. Trendle, you also, I believe, sent an email into staff, which
Correct.
they've shared with us. So we have a variety of comments, and that will become part of the public record as well. So appreciate that. Did you have anything further that you wanted to add?
No, it's just too many people. That road is overpopulated now, and there's kids walking along that road to school. We've got the high school to the west and the other one to the east, and there's kids walking down there, and one of those kids are going to get it. It's going to happen, but I don't want to see it.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any members of council have any questions of Mr. Trendle? Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this matter? Mr. Patton, before we leave, anyone in the digital waiting room other than Ms. Lim? Okay. Mr. Todd, aside from the letter from Mr. Trendle that came in dated November the 14th, dated November the 14th, which will become part of the record, any other correspondence that you're aware of that needs to be referred to in this matter?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, so I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and that means we're going to move to report PDS 76 2023. Do I have a mover for that for information purposes? Councillor Christensen. That report's on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, and I did find the DSBN comment. But one of their comments on there is that board staff requests that a condition of approval that sidewalks be constructed within the development to facilitate student travel to the school bus stop locations. I'm just wondering where are the sidewalks going to be gone? Are they just going to be on the interior, or is Pettit Road going to have sidewalks?
Ms. Young, can you speak to that, or did you want us to go to Mr. Hurlovich?
Worship to Councillor Noyes. Yes, so sidewalks are being proposed within the subdivision. Along Pettit Road, it is part of a development charge project. But in terms of the details of whether sidewalks will be constructed along Pettit Road at this moment, in the foreseeable future, that would be probably not likely, but it is proposed.
Proposed by whom?
Within the,
Development charges?
yes. Actually, maybe I will defer this to Director of Infrastructures, just to confirm.
So, Mr. Hurlovich, do you have some comment on that?
Yes, Your Worship. I believe the report says the Pettit Road would be constructed, I think it's between 2027, 2029. So given that there are ditches along the Pettit Road now, it wouldn't be possible to put a sidewalk in there because it would be at the bottom of the ditch. So we would be collecting dollars from the developer that would go towards the installation of sidewalks at that time.
Mr. Noyes?
And thank you for that explanation. I think, I am concerned about the density. I think that they should not be putting in, squishing as many houses as they possibly can in there. And I'm not sure why just the zoning change would have not been sufficient. They would have not been able to put in as many houses, but they still would have increased it from the current zoning. I don't know why we would approve a zoning change and then approve amendments to the zoning change even further. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Dubanow?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And I'm just going to make some comments more philosophically about these type of developments that are primarily all townhomes. I'm getting a little frustrated by them because when I envision a neighborhood and what I think of as a neighborhood, I don't think of rows of townhouses upon townhouses upon townhouses. I think of, a mix of, primarily single-family homes, different size lots. You may have a block of townhouses here or there, maybe a semi here or there, but certainly not these developments of townhouses on public roads. I'm frustrated when, we have a public meeting about an infill project that involves a townhome or blocks of townhomes. Parking always comes up as a challenge. And when it's on a public road, we don't have the ability to actually control where, other than putting up no parking for everyone, there's no condominium covenant or any other method of control within the site to ensure that there's an orderly flow of traffic and where vehicles park. These are just part of my concern when I see big projects that are all townhomes like this. My personal preference is I would prefer to see these be condominiums. I know that we have other condominium townhome projects in the municipality. I don't know if this is the right number or the right mix, but if this is where a developer wants to go, I think they need to use a different avenue so that we can better control the movement of traffic through them and where that traffic parks and how it affects the residents who live there, rather than it being a public street that anyone can drive through, park anywhere, and so forth. With respect to that, and knowing the challenges that we have with housing prices and land prices particularly, trying to squeeze as many homes as they can on a lot to keep that value at a certain level. I'm not naive. I know we're going to see more applications for townhouses, more applications for houses on smaller lots. Our job here at council is going to be to ensure that we find ways to integrate them and make them function properly and not cause issues for the areas where they go in. Having said that, Pettit Road, I am very concerned about my own experience driving on Pettit Road all the time. I'm not so concerned about vehicles. I understand that there's some opinion on speeding, and that's fine. My concern is the pedestrian traffic and the cyclist traffic. There's no sidewalks on that road. There are ditches on either side. If we're going to have a neighborhood that is designed for families moving in here with an outlet onto Pettit Road, possibly crossing the street for school or other activities, we really need to get the pedestrian and the cyclist safety situation sorted out here. I'll leave that for staff to provide us in the recommendation report, as well as some of the other points that I raised. I'll be approving this, or rather, voting in favor of this tonight to receive for information purposes, and I hope the applicant and staff have heard the comments, and we'll see where we can go from there. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Anyone else? Mr. Hurlovich, I'm sorry, Councillor Christensen, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Didn't look very enthusiastic to me.
I'm not very enthusiastic about the proposal, Your Worship.
Okay.
And I would concur with the comments with respect to the concerns that Councillor Dubanow and Councillor Noyes have expressed. And I'm starting fundamentally with, so my concern started with the fact that we have a secondary plan that was approved. The approach completely abrogates the approved secondary plan for reasons of perceived efficiency. I think the discussion we've had tonight indicate that the perceived efficiency for the developer creates many real inefficiencies for the residents of the community, both existing residents and future residents, as well as for the town, specifically with respect to the items that Councillor Dubanow has referred to, the speed along Pettit Road. I believe one of the speakers spoke to the difficulty in, I believe it was in a written correspondence, the difficulty of getting out onto Pettit Road, out of the driveway, and the safety of adults and children and pets in the community walking through there. I also had concerns about the nonchalant, I will say, reference under the District School Board of Niagara response, which was nonchalant is the only word I can think of. One of the speakers again spoke to the number of children that could be living in this community, and I think of the schools and the pressures on the GFES and the elementary school that are in the catchment area, which are already experiencing significant pressures from locally new subdivisions in the general area. So that I'm quite concerned about that response. So I have, as you can see, a lot of concerns. I also, there's a lot of discussion about affordability, let's face it. I don't think without a significant federal and provincial engagement in the housing market, as was done post-war and post the Second World War, in actually developing mortgage and lending tools that facilitated access to purchased and rental housing for people of a range of incomes. We have severely limited tools in the municipality, and the proposal is by no means going to produce anything that is attainable other than for people who have significant incomes, probably two-income families or support from their families. So I have a lot of issues that, and I'm not quite sure. I will certainly wait to see what could be negotiated. But I also, with respect to the flow and the aesthetics, the idea of blocks of townhouses reminds me of my work that I did in the past in Regent Park in Toronto, where there were blocks of townhouses. Townhouses are wonderful. I've lived in them. I've lived in I think 3 in my life, only one of which I owned. They're a great housing form, but again, a more mixed community particularly, and also the actual density that's planned in this site really concerns me. That, I use the word concern. It worries me. So I just had to say that because I'm looking at the cumulative impact of a lot of these developments, and I think the mayor has said it well. We are aware. I think we now have to look at what we do, and I had to start with the fact that this is in defiance of an existing secondary plan. I know these things happen. Doesn't mean I'm happy. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Anyone else? Councillor Noyes, before I go back to you, is there any other councillor that hasn't spoken yet? Councillor Noyes?
I'm just wondering if, when this comes back before us, if we can actually have an idea that if we don't approve all the reliefs that they're asking for, how would that change the number and the sizes of the lots and things like that?
Say that again.
If we don't provide, if we don't agree to any of the reliefs, in other words, they can have some of the zoning changes, but they can't get all the reliefs that they're wanting, like the lot, the maximum coverage, et cetera, et cetera. What would it look like? What would the number be? And what would the,
Well, Ms. Young can take that into consideration. So the point is that if the zoning is permitted but not the modifications to the zoning, how many units does that create? Or do you know that already?
Through your worship, I don't know this answer at this moment, but I will make note of it so I can include it for you.
Okay. Ms. Young, I think you can have a seat. I just had a few questions of Mr. Hurlovich relative to the policies that are referred to in the report that are to guide us with respect to this matter. One of which is, and I don't know whether we should be concerned about this or not, in view of the passage of time and the provincial government's rather strident approach to facilitating housing. Policy 13.5 2 says in subparagraph A, the plan of subdivision conforms with the policies of the official plan. My understanding is that the secondary plan is part of the official plan. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship.
And should we be concerned about the rather casual approach that the developer has taken to an existing secondary plan?
I'm not sure what you mean about casual approach.
Well, it doesn't comply with the density. It really doesn't comply with the location of the stormwater management pond for 2. So I'm just wondering, should we be concerned about that?
So I think those are valid points that are being made. Certainly, Ms. Young has already outlined that staff is working with the developer on the location of the stormwater pond. We do have some concerns as staff that there is a stormwater pond located, an existing pond already located within the plan of subdivision, and so to create a second one would double the costs of maintenance for the municipality. So that's something that we are looking into. So it is, as I said, valid. Certainly, what has happened since the time the secondary plan has developed, or was developed and adopted by town council, the cost of residential land has skyrocketed. And so therefore, zoning standards that were set in 1990 really impact on the cost of housing. So while we're all concerned about affordability, land costs add to that. So it is something that we take seriously, and so we do examine that, when the density is, the lot area per unit is proposed to be changed.
I'm pretty sure that the Spears High Point secondary plan wasn't adopted in 1990. I think it's more recently, since I think I was the mayor, and I wasn't in 1990. So the other aspect of the secondary plan is the partial fabric, and there was one slide that showed a street alignment and to me it looked like a more efficient use of the lands. But is that something that we should be concerned about? Because I've raised it with Mr. Butler, the efficiency of the use of the lands. Maybe from the developer's perspective, the use of his lands in this instance is efficient. What about the use of the lands to the south, which I think are going to be negatively impacted by this proposal? Any comments on that, Mr. Hurlovich?
So, yes, Your Worship, I understand the developer has approached the landowner to the south to acquire those lands and incorporate that. However, given that he was unwilling to sell, or at least they were unable to make an agreement, the developer has designed a road system that connects the existing High Point subdivision with Pettit Road, and a system which will allow the lands to the south to develop. It may be that the landowner to the south, who we heard from earlier, who thinks townhouses present too many units, could develop his part fronting onto Street B with singles. So, you know, there are different options that haven't yet all been explored. But you know, I don't think it's fair that development should be stymied because adjacent landowners do not wish to participate at the moment. So they've created a road network that is actually workable. You know, what I'm hearing is the concern is the flow or the speed of traffic on Pettit is excessive. And that's coming from existing residents and or users of Fort Erie rather, and not necessarily the future owners. We don't know how or what they're going to be driving. With respect to 1990, I thought we were talking about modifying the zoning, changing the lot area per unit. That was 1990, but you are correct. The Spears High Point secondary plan was much more recent.
Thank you. There's also in policy 13.52 a reference to the town being able to provide necessary services without imposing undue increases in taxation on all residents. And that to me, I think, touches upon the changes that the provincial government has made to development charges. So just having heard some of the questions, some of the answers, the proposal, the concerns about safety on Pettit, is the municipality going to be able to generate sufficient development charges from a development of this nature to avoid having to pass some of the costs of development on to the residents, Mr. Hurlovich? You may not know the answer to that, and if you don't, that's fine.
Yes, yeah, I do not know the answer.
Okay. And subsection D of that policy states that the plan of subdivision is not deemed to be premature. It may be that some may consider it unfair to the owner of the property that's the subject of tonight's application, but doesn't council have to be considering more than just one subdivision at a time, such as the lady, Ms. Reeves, that came up and spoke about, you know, the traffic study should really have reference to all of the development that's taking place in the neighborhood. Doesn't council have an obligation, Mr. Hurlovich, to be considering how all of these developments integrate with each other and whether or not we should be trying to maximize the use of all the land and not maybe favoring one property owner who's gotten to us before the next property owner?
Your Worship, I believe you are absolutely correct. And in this case, the developer has proposed a road which would provide full access to the adjacent owner to the south, as well as a road connection to the south so that the road could connect with Nathaniel. So I believe they've tried to accommodate that, but that's will be addressed during the recommendation report.
Right, and then policy 13.7, which sets out some criteria that we're also supposed to consider in looking at official plan and zoning amendments, makes reference to the convenience and accessibility of the site for vehicular and pedestrian traffic and the traffic safety in relation thereto. That is a concern that we surely must be taking into account, is it not, Mr. Hurlovich?
Yes, it is, and that's one of the reasons that we required a traffic impact study, and I believe Ms. Young again said there are some modifications being sought to that.
Thank you. Any other members of council have any other questions or comments? If not, then I'm going to call the question to receive this report for information purposes. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That takes us to the second, and anyone who's here for this last public meeting, you may feel free to leave now. You don't have to stick around. We'll give you a second to leave the chamber as we're getting teed up for the next public meeting. And that is the combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment with respect to 5047 Dubanow Hills Road. And Mr. Vanderveen, I understand that you're going to be providing. Mr. Vanderveen, I understand you're going to be providing us with some background information.
That is correct, Mayor Redekop. Just waiting for the presentation here.
Yep, for sure. That gives the people here for the last item an opportunity to leave.
Okay, okay to begin, Mayor Redekop?
It is, yes, please proceed.
Okay. Yeah, good evening, Mayor Redekop, members of council, any members of the public that may be here in attendance in person or following this public meeting on Zoom. This public meeting is for a proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 5047 Dubanow Hills Road. The owner is Dubanow Hills Land Incorporated, care of Jennifer Braunstein. The agent is NPG Planning Solutions Limited, and that's Azawari Modak and Aaron Butler. So the purpose of this application is to permit the existing single detached dwelling and a detached accessory building being used for sleeping accommodation in human habitation on the subject lands. An official plan amendment is required as the subject lands are currently designated environmental protection in the town's official plan. Lands designated as environmental protection do not permit residential uses or accessory buildings. A site-specific policy area is proposed. The zoning is proposed to change from dune protection zone to dune protection DP 790 zone, a site-specific zoning. A zoning bylaw amendment is required as the dune protection zone does not normally permit residential uses or accessory buildings. Further, general provisions of the town zoning bylaw do not permit sleeping accommodations or human habitation in accessory buildings. Notification of the November 20th, 2023 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a public notice sign on the property on October 30th, 2023. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed the notice of complete application and public meeting on October 31st, 2023. So this slide shows a timeline of the development application process. In accordance with Bill 109, the proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment application is subject to a 120-day processing and review timeline. The clock starts the date the application is deemed complete, which was September 15, 2023, and will stop the day council makes a decision on the application. So just to go through the timeline here, the planning staff held a pre-consultation meeting with the applicant on January 26, 2023. The application was submitted and deemed complete on September 15, 2023. A public information open house was held on October 18, 2023. And this evening, November 20th, 2023 is the public meeting, and staff is also submitting an information recommendation report. And again, this is day 66 of the timeline. The subject lands are located in the Point Dubanow area of the town of Fort Erie on the west side of Dubanow Hills Road. The subject lands are outside of the urban boundary and are located southwest of the Crystal Beach neighborhood. The site is approximately 2.9 hectares in area and has 122.32 meters of lot frontage. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, single detached dwellings along the Lake Erie waterfront. To the south, single detached dwellings along the Lake Erie waterfront. To the east, vacant wooded land, and to the west, Lake Erie. The subject lands are designated environmental protection in the town's official plan. An official plan amendment is required to add a site-specific policy area to 4057 Abbott Hills Road to permit the single detached dwelling and an accessory building used for sleeping accommodations and human habitation in an area designated environmental protection. Residential uses and accessory buildings are generally not permitted in areas that are designated environmental protection. The proposed site-specific policy area will retain the environmental protection land use designation, but will permit a two-story single detached dwelling with a 174.3 square meter building footprint and a one-story accessory building with a 30.5 square meter building footprint. The site-specific policy area is also proposed to permit the accessory building to be used for human habitation. The property is located within an area of archaeological potential as identified in Schedule D of the town's official plan. An archaeological assessment was not required in this instance, as no new development will result from this application, and the two buildings are existing. There are a number of natural heritage features on the subject lands and in the area. Schedule C of the official plan identifies the property as part of an area of natural and scientific interest, in part, dune protection area in part, environmentally sensitive area in part, provincially significant wetland in part, and woodlot over 2 hectares in part. Schedule C1 of the official plan similarly identifies portions of the property as dune protection and natural hazard area. The applicant has provided a natural heritage impact assessment memo prepared by Ecological and Environmental Solutions in July 2023 that demonstrates that there are no significant impacts to natural heritage features resulting from the single detached dwelling or the accessory building on the subject lands. The dwelling is existing and the accessory building was constructed on a former tennis court in an area of the property that was already disturbed. Review of the site by Niagara Region and the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority similarly concluded that there are no impacts to natural heritage features. The Natural Heritage Impact Assessment Memo was also circulated to the town's Environmental Advisory Committee, and they did not object to the conclusions of the memo. The subject lands are currently zoned dune protection zone in part, environmental protection zone in part, and hazard zone in part, in accordance with the town's comprehensive zoning bylaw number 129-90 as amended. The single detached dwelling and the accessory building are located in the portion of the property that is zoned dune protection zone. A zoning bylaw amendment is proposed to bring the single detached dwelling and the accessory building into conformity with the zoning bylaw, as the dune protection zone does not permit residential uses or accessory buildings. The dune protection zone is proposed to change to a site-specific dune protection zone. The site-specific zoning will contain provisions to permit a two-story single detached dwelling with a building footprint of 174.3 square meters in a one-story accessory building with a building footprint of 30.5 square meters. The proposed amendment will also contain a special provision that permits use of the accessory building for sleeping accommodations and human habitation. This is normally not permitted as subsection 6.1 of section 6 general provisions of the zoning bylaw does not permit it. The portions of the property that are zoned environmental protection zone and hazard zone will remain unchanged. So this is a site plan of the property, just to point out a few notable characteristics. First is the existing dwelling. I'm just going to go back there. It's located here on the site. This is the location of the the accessory building. This is the approximate water's edge, and to the east is Dubanow Hills Road. So this is a photo of the accessory building in question. This is looking north towards it. This is looking east towards the accessory building. This is looking northwest towards the dwelling in the accessory building. You can see the dwelling in the rear on the left side of the image. This is the interior of the accessory building. And this is a photo of the two-piece bathroom that's also within the accessory building. An information open house was held in person in the atrium of Town Hall on October 18th, 2023, from 5 to 6 p.m. for this proposal. All property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands were notified of the information open house via a notice mailed by staff on October 4th, 2023. The meeting was attended by 2 members of the public who are interested in purchasing the property. It was also attended by the agent and town staff. No major concerns were raised by the public at the information open house meeting, and also no major concerns were received in email correspondence received to date. So just to conclude, the proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment will bring the single detached dwelling and accessory building into conformity with the town's official plan and zoning bylaw, and permit use of the accessory building for sleeping accommodations and human habitation. Planning staff are satisfied that the accessory building is ancillary to the existing residential use and will have minimal impacts on the area. Consultation with Niagara Region, the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, and the town's Environmental Advisory Committee have confirmed that there are no significant impacts to natural heritage features on the subject property or in the area. This was also supported by the Natural Heritage Impact Assessment that was provided by the applicant. And to conclude, the proposal is consistent with the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, in the opinion of staff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderveen. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. To Mr. Vanderveen. Can you go to slide number 12?
Sure.
I just wanted to have a better look. So there's no stove in here, right? It's just a sink and it looks like a little fridge.
That is correct. Through the mayor to Councillor Noyes, there's not a dedicated kitchen area in there.
I wasn't sure because we went through it so quickly. It looks lovely. My question is, like, this was built without a permit.
That is correct.
So if we say yes, what happens to the fees that should have been collected for the building permit?
Mr. Vanderveen.
Through Mayor Redekop, Councillor Noyes, the applicant does have a building permit in, so they will be required to pay the fees. I believe the fee is double if it's built without a building permit, so those will be collected if this application is approved.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? So, Mr. Vanderveen, I guess we would have to, when we get to the report stage, we can confirm whether the building permit fee has doubled as a result of the failure to obtain it prior to construction.
Yes, and I can follow up with council once I speak with the chief building official on that as well.
Please do that. Any other members of council? My question would be this. Do we have any record of the owner of the property coming forward in 2015 to make inquiries about a building permit for this particular building?
To be Redekop, not to my knowledge. However, it's my understanding that the original principal behind the company that owns the property has passed away, and it's a family member looking to settle the estate. So they're looking to bring the property into full conformity with the zoning bylaw and the official plan to facilitate sale of the property.
I see, because the prospective purchaser found out that there was a building here that we're not aware of.
Yes, the legal representatives of the seller, they submitted a request for a property information status report, and it was identified at this time that the structure was built without a permit. They followed up with planning staff, and we basically told them you could submit a legal affidavit to try and establish its legal nonconforming, or initiate this process to bring it into conformity with the official plan and zoning bylaw.
Mm-hmm. I was curious because it's a rather attractive building, and I'm sure that it's a rather expensive building, and one would have thought that if you're going to put out that kind of money, you'd at least look into a building permit. But the other question that I had is, had this building not been previously constructed, had the owner of a lot along this area, in a rural area, come forward and asked for permission to build a bunkie, would staff typically have approved that type of thing, or at least been prepared to recommend that be approved to council?
In my opinion, I mean, we would have had to go through the same process. We did have one up the road several years ago, It was a dwelling unit built over a garage, I believe. So again, every application's kind of reviewed on its own basis, and we would have had to go through a combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment, but given that it is accessory to the main dwelling, it's not what we would consider to be an independent dwelling unit. In my opinion, we would have considered it for certain.
You would have had a legal obligation to consider it. The report does make reference to the fact that there can be a restriction put on any expansion to the existing two-story building, or, yes. What about the accessory building? Are there any restrictions that need to be put on that other than what we already have in terms of use as an accessory building?
Yes, the actual base zoning for dune protection, all of the setbacks and things of that nature are as existing. So if we contain a provision that establishes the building footprint as existing as well, any further additions or expansions would have to come in and at minimum apply for a minor variance application to be approved by the Committee of Adjustment and reviewed by staff.
Because this property is outside the urban boundary, the provisions in various pieces of provincial legislation that have tried to intensify development wouldn't be applicable to this parcel, would it?
They would not at this time.
Okay, so if there was an effort to put in kitchen facilities, that would be clearly inappropriate.
I wouldn't say it would be completely unsupportable. We did have an application earlier this year on Point Avenue Road where they built a second dwelling unit in an agricultural area. They were able to demonstrate that it met MDS, had a septic approval, and we were able to support that application after going through the process and doing the review. So there's no provincial basis for permitting these as of right, as they are in the urban boundary at this time. But again, it's we would have to go through the review and review it, but it's not a definitive no in terms of support either.
Do you have the slightest information that may be part and parcel of what we may see in the future with this accessory building?
In terms of converting it to a dwelling unit?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Vanderveen. Any other members of council? Thank you. So then we'll go to the agent or the owner. I think it'll be the agent, Mr. Butler.
Yes, sir.
Certainly making efficient use of your time.
Yes, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to Mr. Vanderveen for the great overview here. I won't spend too much time going through the presentation we've created in detail, as Mr. Vanderveen's covered most of what we would have presented anyhow. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Yep. Okay, so I think I'll jump to a couple of slides here. Just these show the aerial images, some older aerial images. So as Mr. Vanderveen was describing, you can see in the square here is the location of the accessory structure. Just to the kind of left of it is the current building. That pad you see on the left-hand side is a tennis court. So this tennis court has existed in this area for decades, at least to the mid-50s, possibly before that. And so it's been a cleared area and kind of a flat plateau on the site since then. The image on the right, which is from 2010, does show some kind of accessory structure there. That's not the current structure. I'm told that this was some kind of maybe tennis clubhouse or kind of not a pool house, but a recreational, shed, something like that. That was replaced. So the current building was replaced in the location of that tiny green roof structure you can see on the right. And my point is really that from a natural heritage perspective, there are no impacts, and really that's because of the existing grading, that it is a flat area. It's concrete. It's been concrete for decades. And, you know, there's no tree removal, there's no grading proposed, there's actually no development proposed with this application. And so that's my first point, just that I think even, to your point, Mr. Mayor, if there wasn't an existing building here and we were looking at this independently now, I do think that this would still be supportable from a natural heritage perspective. There's nothing in provincial law that mandates the municipality to permit dwelling units outside of the urban boundary, accessory dwelling units outside of the urban boundary, but provincial policy doesn't restrict that. Having said that, this isn't a dwelling unit. You know, you saw the pictures inside, a bed, there is a toilet and a small kind of wet bar, a sink with I think there might be a small fridge there. And to that end, I just wanted to also mention that the property is already serviced. This structure is connected to the septic system on the property, and permits from the Niagara Region were received for that. That was done legally, and the property has municipal water service. So you saw the pictures from Mr. Van der Veen already, but just to show them again here, the image on the left with the existing dwelling, the lakes on the left-hand side, the picture in the center, kind of standing at one end of the tennis court, looking, you know, towards half court, the accessory structures on one end, and the picture on the right, you can see the concrete. There's actually curbing around the concrete on this kind of flat area. And so really that's all I wanted to mention, that the proposal in our mind is consistent with provincial policy. The amendment to the official plan, the amendment to the zoning bylaw are required to rectify this situation. Firstly, to permit the structures themselves in the dune protection zone, which are existing, and to permit the use interior of the accessory structure for sleeping. That really concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mr. Butler. Mr. Butler, is it a shared septic bed?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's my understanding. Both structures go to the same system on the property.
Okay. And do each one of these buildings have their own water, like town water supply?
There would, through you, Mr. Mayor, there would just be the one water supply from the road, and then the pipes coming off of that on private property to each. So there's water to both buildings, but one municipal connection.
Okay, but there'd be 1 meter,
Correct.
not 2.
1 meter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Just out of curiosity's sake, how would you get a permit to connect to the septic system without a building permit from the municipality?
I thought you might ask that, Mr. Mayor, but I don't know.
So you must have an answer.
No, I don't. This was back in 2015 when it was constructed. I've seen the permits, I've seen the drawings. I wondered that myself. I do not have the answer to that question.
Sounds like maybe there should be some better coordination between the region and the town. Thanks. Thank you very much, Mr. Butler. Now, other than the only people in the audience, I'm sure, are the people who are interested in buying this property. So obviously, they would want to speak in support of the application if they want to speak at all. And since you're not the owners, you could come forward and speak to council if you wish. We would need your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm Laura Bechtel, L-U-R-A-B-E-C-H-T-E-L. My address is 88 Scott Street, Unit 3408 in Toronto, M5E0A9. And we'd just like to thank you for your consideration and say we're in support.
Okay, that's very brief and very concise. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, Councillor Noyes has a question.
Yes.
Are you planning on living there yourself, or are you planning on renting it?
We're planning on living there,
Thank you.
yes. Anyone else?
No, I think that's good. Thank you.
Welcome to Fort Erie.
Mr. Patton, can you advise whether there's anybody in the digital waiting room that wishes to address council? It's completely empty? Okay. Okay. So I guess I should ask formally if there's anyone opposed to the application that wishes to address council. And there is no one here, so that would mean no. Mr. Todd, have we received any information from anyone with respect to this matter?
No, Your Worship.
Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to move to report PDS 77-2023. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lewis. Any questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. It's regarding the the one water service that's actually servicing 2 buildings. How do we work that? Should they each have a separate meter? Should they be billed?
Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Our bylaws state 1 meter per property.
Thank you, that answers that question. Thank you.
It does. Any other questions or comments? Then I'm going to call the question with respect to the recommendation. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Okay. Nice to see you again, Mr. Butler. You've had a interesting evening. Okay. So that takes us then to the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, then can I have a mover, Councillor Lewis? Questions or comments with respect to the reports in the consent agenda? Councillor Noyes and then Councillor Flagg. Why don't I go to Councillor Flagg and then we'll come back to Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Your Worship. In respect to IS 24-2023, I had an opportunity to speak about this. I just want to get further clarity through you. When I see financials and there's bracketed items, I look at that oftentimes as a negative. And I just want to be clear that the Bay Beach summary report, that was actually a positive to the town and not a negative.
Yeah, Mr. Jansen, can you comment on that? We're looking at page 3, I think, of the report.
Yes, I did take a look at that. It looks like that the numbers are being reported in accounting parlance, with negatives being credits and expenses in this case being debits. So, the budget in particular, the $605,000, that's the budgeted revenue, so that's not a negative, and the net surplus then is the excess of revenues over expenses, so that is good news.
Councillor Flagg?
No, that's great. I spoke with Mr. Jansen about this as well, but I just, some further clarity, appreciate that.
Well, on that point, Mr. Jansen, the reality is that the revenues were less than what was budgeted. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Councillor Noyes, back to you.
Well, thank you, Mayor Redekop. My question is in regards to CS 12-2023 too, I think. One is I just noticed a comment about the bingo, the gaming revenue is expected to be higher than budgeted, which is great, both for the town and for the organizations. I think it's good to know that it's now above pre-pandemic levels, so it must help the organizations. The other question I had was about just, on page, we talked about the development charges, background study, and in there it comments about that the staff may have some alternatives, and I'm just wondering what those alternatives may be.
Who wants to address that? Mr. Hurlovich, is that you, or is that CAO, or Mr. Mr. Jansen?
That's on page 6 of 8.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I found that now. The alternatives being referred to there is that whole section is dealing with funding of the current exemptions in the current DC bylaw. Alternatives refer to options with the new DC bylaw and the study being brought forward to council on December 11th. So we currently have a number of exemptions in the bylaw. We'll be reviewing those and in that report, comment on alternatives with those.
Okay, thank you.
Noyes. Any other questions or comments with respect to the reports? Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I just want to have a couple of comments with respect to IS 24, 2023. Certainly want to start by thanking the work of the IS department, and in particular, Sean Hutton, for the work that was done in the last year. You know, it's a shame that the weather was what the weather was, because I think we would have been on track for probably a very successful beach year. Not to say that having a profit is not a success, because that certainly is. I also want to mention that the garbage pickup along Erie Road in the downtown core by the beach team was incredibly well received, very helpful. I think we've still got maybe a little bit of more work to do, but much better and less concerns from the Business Improvement Association and the neighborhood. I want to just pose a couple of questions tonight, and not because I'm looking for an answer this evening. We have a couple of IS meetings that are coming up where I think this could be, or would be probably a better opportunity to have some in-depth conversations, but those are related to the potential for increasing capacity at the Bay Beach facility into the 2024 season, realizing that public safety is a concern, as is having a beach amenity that is favorable to patrons and having them return. But I do think that there is some opportunity there for an increase, and certainly that is something that's been well expressed by the business owners within the downtown Crystal Beach core, as well as neighboring Ridgeway. The other is the lack of paddle boards and kayak or small non-motorized boats. I did a quick search in Port Colborne, and I couldn't really tell if Nickel Beach allowed. They had water devices, but it doesn't specify what a water device would be. But I know it's been a long-standing practice within the municipality not to allow paddle boards onto the beach property. But I can't help but notice in other areas, both in Ontario and out of Ontario, a number of public beaches do allow patrons to bring those to a specific area on the beach. Maybe it's numbered, I'm not sure, but those are some of the questions that I'd like to have some more in-depth conversation on. Certainly sad to see the 10% revenues down, but I do believe most of that was weather-driven. And my other question, or the question that I'm hoping I could get an answer for tonight on, would be of the revenues that are collected for Bay Beach in terms of profit, realizing that that location does have staffing, so there's a cost, but the surplus money that is generated from Bay Beach, where does that money go? Does it go back into the general account, or is it earmarked, or is any of it earmarked for other tourism-related initiatives within the municipality? And I say that with the caveat that Fort Erie as a whole purchased the Bay Beach property for a return on investment. But at the same point, it is a draw, it does create revenue, and I'd like to know a little bit more information either tonight or at a later date on how that money is allocated within the municipality.
Mr. Jansen?
Through you to Mayor. The parking component of revenues, the net surplus, as audited at the end of the year, that is transferred to a parking reserve, so that parking revenues or net surpluses are applied to future projects for capital needs. It's not identified by geographical area, but it does support all parking capital for the town. The rest, in terms of admissions, that is part of the town's general operations and not subject to any particular allocation.
Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for that clarity. I apologize for not mentioning it beforehand, and certainly we can have some continued discussion on those moving forward. But I thought it was a very well-written report. I'm interested to see the feedback in terms of efficiencies for the 2024 season, and hopefully we can address some of these other questions that I had at a future IS meeting.
Any other members of council? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. This is going on with Councillor Lewis. Just a question, you were mentioning about power boards. I'm thinking of Sea-Doos or whatever. I think that may
No, I
be
think you
included.
said paddle boards.
Power.
Paddle boards.
Paddle.
Boards. Not power, yeah, no,
Okay, but
paddle
then that-
boards.
Then I don't have a question, because I was going to say,
Good.
do they have lifeguards?
Okay. Anyone else? If not, I'm going to call a question on the reports and recommendations in the consent agenda. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. That then takes us to Planning and Development Services. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship, Planning and Development Services is in session for the evening, and amazingly, well, actually, no presentations or delegations. However, amazingly, we have no reports. Don't get too excited too yet, though. Any new business or inquiries this evening from members of council? Oh, you guys are making it easy for me. Any questions about the business status report? And just in case anyone's looking, we do actually have a fairly busy November 27th and December 11th planned. That's why, you take it today and then you get the busy time at the other time. So any questions regarding that? All right, well, I don't think I have the record, Your Worship, but I hand the chair back to you.
Okay, then that takes us to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Infrastructure Services is now in session. There are no presentations or delegations. There are no reports. Any new business inquiries? Seeing none, that brings us to the business status report. Any questions? Seeing none, I will now turn the chair back to Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. Councillor McDermott, Corporate and Community Services.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports. Are there any new business inquiries? Seeing none, anything on the business status report? Councillor Lewis.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a brief comment regarding the dissolution of the Crystal Beach Beautification Committee. I know a lot of work has been done by the committee, and I'm glad to see that the town is taking the approach of also acknowledging the good work that's been done and the continued good work that's going to be done under the umbrella of the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Association.
Anybody else? Your Worship.
Yeah, just in conjunction, I see that there are 4 reports here for December the 11th. There are a number of reports on infrastructure, and then there's quite a few reports and 1 or 2 public meetings under planning for December the 11th. So I do hope that staff appreciates that we have a capacity to read and sit. Yeah, maybe that is the plan. That was my only comment, Chair.
Then it's back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So we do have one item that the staff would like to deal with in closed session. Can I have a motion to go into closed session? Councillor McDermott, are there any questions or comments with respect to that? That is the item relative to, that would be, yeah, so wait a second. I've got 3 items. So 1 was removed, so the one on Pettit Road was removed, so we've got Rebstock Road and Helena Street. Okay, all those in favor of going into closed session? Opposed? Carried. We're back in the council chamber, and Councillor Lewis, you have the motion for us to rise from closed session.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself that council rise and reconvene from closed session at 8:36 p.m. with respect to 015850 Rebstock Road, OLT 23-00311, and 613 Helena Street, that staff proceed as directed.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor of the resolution? That is carried. And that takes us then to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings anyone wishes to alert us to? Councillor Noyes.
Yes, tomorrow, November 21st, the Humane Society of Greater Niagara at 6 o'clock in the Thorold office.
Did you say 6 o'clock? Any other meetings? Councillor Christensen.
Yes, tomorrow at 3 p.m., the Community Health Care Services Committee is meeting at Town Hall, and at 4:30 p.m., the Fort Erie Library Board is meeting at the central branch of the
Centennial Library.
Yeah, Centennial Library.
Any other meetings? There being none, Councillor Dubanow, motion to adjourn.
Yes, motion to adjourn, Your Worship, at 8:37 p.m. this evening.
All those in favor? None opposed? Was that a late in favor or an early opposed? Councillor Christensen?
I was just making sure that you saw my in favor.
Okay, perfect. That's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
Yes.